My granddaughter texted me at 9:40 on a Tuesday night. "Grandpa, please don't come to the engagement party. Connor's mother thinks it'll be easier without you there." I didn't text back. I set the phone face down on the counter, finished drying the same plate I'd already dried twice, and went to bed. By Thursday morning, I'd moved every dollar I had sitting in trust for her out of reach, and I slept better than I had in months. I'm 71. My name doesn't matter so much as what I did with 60 years of it, which was lay pipe and pour foundations across the GTA until my knees gave out and my back said no more. I built half the basements in Mississauga that nobody ever thanks a man for. My wife, Joan, died 8 years ago this past March. Pancreatic, fast, the kind of fast that doesn't give you time to say the things you meant to say for 39 years of marriage. After she went, the only person who still came around on Sundays was my granddaughter. I'll call her my granddaughter and leave it at that, because some names you don't put back out into the world once they've hurt you. She was raised mostly by me and Joan. Her mother, my daughter, left when she was 4, moved out west, sends a card at Christmas if she remembers. So it was Joan and me at every dance recital, every parent-teacher night, every scraped knee. When Joan passed, I kept it going alone. I drove her to her first job interview in my truck because hers wouldn't start. I co-signed the lease on her first apartment in Etobicoke. When she finished her diploma in early childhood education, I sat in that gymnasium in my one good suit and cried like an idiot, because Joan should have been the one crying, not me. 3 years ago, I sold the house in Mississauga. Too big, too quiet, too much Joan in every room for me to keep living there alone, and I moved into a condo near the lake. The sale put a fair amount of money in my account. Canadian dollars, mind you, not American, and in this country that kind of money doesn't stretch the way people think it does once the CRA gets its piece and the building fees start eating at you every month. But I'd lived frugal my whole life. I had enough. And I'd set a good portion of it aside, in a joint account with my granddaughter's name on it, meant for her wedding someday and whatever came after. A down payment, a baby, whatever life handed her. I never told her the exact number. I just let her know it was there, for when the day came. The day came faster than I expected. She met a man named Connor at the daycare where she worked. His sister taught there too. Connor's people had money the old way, the kind that's been sitting in a family for 3 generations, golf club money, a cottage on Georgian Bay that's been in the family since before I was born. His mother, I'll just call her Connor's mother, ran some kind of fundraising committee for the hospital board and wore blazers that probably cost more than my truck. The first time I met her, at a dinner my granddaughter set up to ease everybody in, she looked at my hands, still scarred up from 40 years of rebar and concrete, and asked me with a little laugh like it was nothing what kind of work I'd done before retiring before. Like labor was a phase a man grew out of. I told her. Pipe fitting, foundations, framing, 40 years. She nodded the way you nod at a child who's told you something cute and turned back to ask my granddaughter about caterers. I let it go. You learn at my age which hills are worth dying on, and a stranger's manners over a dinner roll isn't one of them. But it kept happening. Small things. Connor's mother referring to me at a shower as the grandfather, rather than by any name, the way you'd refer to a piece of furniture that came with the house. A comment about how some families do things differently when I showed up to a planning meeting in my work boots because I'd come straight from helping a neighbor with his deck. I noticed. I didn't say anything. My granddaughter noticed too, and I watched her get quieter every time, caught between the man who raised her and the family she was marrying into. The engagement party was meant to be the big public moment, both families together, at a function hall out in Oakville that Connor's mother had booked, the kind of place with a circular drive and a coat check. I had my suit pressed. I'd bought a card, put a check inside it for an amount that would have made her gasp, the first real installment toward the wedding I'd been saving for her whole life. I was looking forward to it the way you look forward to very few things once you're past 70, with the kind of quiet, stupid hope you don't admit to anyone. The text came the night before. "Grandpa, please don't come to the engagement party. Connor's mother thinks it'll be easier without you there. She says it sends the wrong impression to her side of the family. I'm so sorry. I tried. I love you." I read it 4 times. I took my reading glasses off and cleaned them on my shirt, like that might change the words underneath. It didn't. I put the phone down on the kitchen counter and stood there a long while, looking out the window at the lake, at the lights on the water, thinking about every Sunday dinner, every recital, every hour I'd spent with grease under my nails so she could grow up soft-handed and easy, with choices I never had. I want to be clear about something, because people watching this will want to make me into either a saint or a villain, and I was neither. I wasn't angry that night, not the hot kind of angry. I was something colder than that. I was done. I didn't reply to the text. I didn't call. The next morning I called my financial advisor, a sensible woman named, I'll just say my advisor, that's enough, and told her I wanted the joint account split. My granddaughter's name came off everything that wasn't already legally locked to her. I canceled the check sitting in the card on my counter and tore it into 4 pieces. I called the venue directly. I'd been the one who put down the deposit for the engagement party as a surprise contribution, a fact nobody but the venue manager and I knew, and I told them I was withdrawing my portion of the payment, effective immediately, per the terms of the agreement I'd signed. The party still happened, I found out later, but smaller than planned, in a side room instead of the main hall, because the full balance hadn't been covered. Apparently there was some confusion that evening about flowers that didn't arrive, and a band that played only a short acoustic set instead of the 5-piece they'd booked. I wasn't there. I was home, eating a frozen dinner and watching the Leafs lose, which felt about right for the night. It took 2 days for my granddaughter to call. She was crying before I even said hello. "Grandpa, what did you do?" I told her the truth, plainly the way I've told the truth my whole life, even when it cost me. I said I didn't do anything to her. I simply stopped paying for people who'd decided I wasn't good enough to be in the room. I told her I loved her more than anything left on this earth, but that love doesn't mean letting people treat you like a wallet with a heartbeat attached, and that someday, when she had her own grandchildren, she'd understand exactly what I meant. She told me Connor's mother was furious, that there'd been a scene, that Connor himself hadn't said much of anything in my defense the whole evening, which told me plenty about the kind of man my granddaughter had chosen, though that wasn't a fight I needed to pick that night. She told me she felt caught in the middle. I told her there was no middle. There was a woman who didn't want a pipefitter's hands at her party, and there was me, and she was going to have to decide sooner or later which side of that line she wanted to stand on for the rest of her life. Connor's mother called me herself 2 days after that, which I didn't expect. Her voice had lost its dinner party polish. She said I'd embarrassed her in front of people who mattered to her, that withdrawing the venue funds last minute was beneath someone my age, that surely I understood how these things worked in families like theirs. I let her finish. Then I told her, calm as I could manage, that I'd spent 40 years building the foundations under buildings that people like her stood in to look down on people like me, and that I was old enough now to choose exactly who got to stand on the one I'd built for my own family. I told her she didn't have to like me. She just didn't get to spend money I hadn't offered in a room I wasn't welcome in and call that fair. She hung up on me. I poured myself 2 fingers of rye, sat on my balcony looking at the lake, and felt, for the first time in a long time, like Joan would have been proud of me instead of telling me to let it go for the sake of peace. The wedding date came up for discussion a month later. Smaller now, the big Oakville plans quietly shrunk down to something more modest, which I understood had a great deal to do with money that was no longer flowing in from my direction. My granddaughter came to see me on a Sunday, the first Sunday in a while, and sat at my kitchen table the way she had 100 times growing up. She didn't ask for money. She asked if I'd walk her down the aisle. She said she'd told Connor and his mother that if I wasn't welcome, the wedding wasn't happening, not the way they'd planned it, not with their money, not anywhere. She said it had taken her embarrassingly long to understand that a family that's ashamed of the man who raised you was never going to be a family worth marrying into quietly. I won't pretend that fixed everything between her and Connor's mother. It didn't. There are dinners now where the air is thinner than it should be, where Connor's mother and I are polite the way 2 people are polite, who've already said the worst things they had to say to each other. But my granddaughter walks into a room these days and doesn't shrink. And on the day of that wedding, smaller, in a backyard instead of a ballroom, I walked her down a strip of grass in my good suit, and when the officiant asked who gives this woman, I said it loud enough for everyone in the yard to hear. Her grandfather does, and he always has. I think about Joan a lot these days, more than I expected to at this stage of grieving her. I think she'd tell me I held the line too hard, or maybe not hard enough. She had opinions about everything, my wife, and I miss every one of them. But I know this much for certain. I spent 40 years building things that outlasted me, foundations under houses I'll never see torn down. I'm not going to spend what's left of my life being treated like something temporary in my own granddaughters. You can take a man's invitation away. You cannot take away what he built, and you cannot make him pay for the privilege of being unwelcome in his own family's life. Some things a man only gets to learn once he's old enough to stop being afraid of losing people who were never really holding on.